There is something that has been happening around you that you have probably misread. Not once, consistently. Someone in your life goes cold without explanation. A friendship that was warm and easy develops a tension that nobody names. A colleague who was collegial becomes subtly undermining. Someone who claimed to support you becomes strangely absent at the moment your support would have mattered most. And you do what most people do. You search yourself for what you did wrong. You review the interactions, the conversations, the moments where something might have shifted. You wonder if you said something offensive, if you were too much, if you somehow communicated something that caused the withdrawal. You apply to the situation the same careful self-examination that you apply to most things, looking for the error, the misstep, the thing you could correct to restore what was there before. And you find nothing. Or you find something small, something that does not feel proportionate to the coldness that followed, something that in any other relationship would have been navigated without the weight it seems to be carrying here. And you are left with a discomfort that has no clean resolution. The relationship has changed. You do not know why. And the explanation that the culture most readily offers, that conflict in relationships is usually mutual, that tension between people usually traces back to something both people contributed, does not feel accurate here. Because what you are sensing, beneath the discomfort, beneath the confusion, beneath the careful self-examination that has not found a satisfying answer, is something that is difficult to name without feeling arrogant. You are sensing that the problem is not something you did. It is something you are, or more precisely, something you have achieved, or built, or become, that the other person wanted and does not have. What you are sensing is envy, and the reason it is so difficult to name is that the culture has surrounded envy with a silence that makes it almost impossible to discuss honestly. Not because it is rare, because it is universal, and universally denied. This video is going to go somewhere that most conversations about envy do not. Not to the experience of envying others, which is the subject most people are willing to engage with because it places the discomfort in themselves, but to the experience of being envied, which is the subject most people cannot engage with at all. Because being envied requires acknowledging, before anything else, that you have something worth envying. And that acknowledgement, in the culture most people were formed in, carries a charge that is almost immediately suppressed. It feels like arrogance, like the specifically dangerous move of believing you are better than others in a way that will invite punishment or withdrawal, or the specific social penalty that attaches to people who think too highly of themselves. So the person who senses they are being envied does not name it. They do the self-examination, they find the insufficient answer, they carry the discomfort without a framework adequate to it, and they often, in the absence of a better explanation, conclude that they are the problem, that their success, or their growth, or the quality in themselves that is producing the tension needs to be managed, minimized, made smaller so the people around them are more comfortable. And something in them, something real and genuine and worth protecting, gets compressed. Not because the envy asked for that compression, because the envy was never named. This video names it. Carl Jung did not write extensively about envy by name, but the psychological territory it occupies is central to his entire body of work. Jung was deeply concerned with what he called the psychology of the collective, the way groups, families, communities, and cultures regulate individual expression through invisible mechanisms of pressure and sanction. His observation, made across decades of clinical work, was that genuine individuality, the authentic expression of who a person actually is, rather than who the collective requires them to be, consistently produces a specific response from the people around them. Not always hostility, not always conscious resentment, but a pressure, a subtle, persistent, rarely named pressure toward reduction, toward becoming less visible, less distinct, less threatening to the equilibrium of the group. Jung understood this pressure not as malice, but as a structural feature of how collectives function. Groups maintain their coherence, partly through the regulation of difference. The person who deviates, who grows beyond the established range, who achieves something or becomes something that exceeds what the group has tacitly agreed is the appropriate ceiling, disrupts the group's sense of itself, and the disruption produces a response. Sometimes it is expressed as criticism, sometimes as withdrawal, sometimes as the specific undermining that is difficult to name because it never quite breaks the surface of explicitness, and sometimes it is expressed as envy, which is the emotional experience of that disruption at the individual level. The feeling that arises in a person when they encounter in someone else something they want and do not have, combined with the belief, often unconscious, that the other person's having it somehow diminishes their own standing. Understanding this is not about feeling superior to the people who envy you. It is about understanding the mechanism accurately enough to stop taking it personally in the way that is currently costing you. Let us be precise about what envy actually is, because the word is used loosely in ways that obscure its specific nature. Envy is not admiration. Admiration is the experience of encountering something excellent and wanting it for yourself. It is outward-facing. It produces aspiration. It does not require diminishing the person who has the thing. Envy is different. Envy contains a comparison that the admiring person's response does not. It is the experience of encountering something excellent in another person, wanting it for yourself, and feeling that the other person's having it is in some way an affront, a commentary on your own lacking, a proof of something about your standing that is painful enough to produce, beneath the wanting, a wish that they did not have it. The philosopher Immanuel Kant described envy as the tendency to perceive with displeasure the good of others, not indifference to the good of others. Displeasure. The person who admires your achievement is warmed by it. The person who envies your achievement is disturbed by it. And the disturbance, because it is not socially acceptable to express, gets converted into criticism that is framed as helpful feedback, into distance that is explained as busyness, into the specific quality of support that is present when you are struggling and absent when you are succeeding, into the conversation that subtly reframes your achievement as luck or privilege or circumstance, in a way that has nothing to do with an accurate assessment of how you got there, and everything to do with the need to find an explanation that does not require acknowledging genuine merit. Because genuine merit, acknowledged fully, produces the most uncomfortable form of envy, the kind that cannot be explained away. There is a taxonomy of envy that is worth understanding, because not all envy looks the same, and understanding the form it takes in your specific relationships allows you to recognize it with the precision that prevents you from misreading it as something else. The first form is the envy of achievement. This is the most visible and most commonly recognized form. It appears when you accomplish something, when a project succeeds, when a goal is reached, when external recognition arrives. The envious response to achievement tends to look like minimization. The achievement gets reframed as smaller than it is, or as the product of factors other than your effort and capability, or as carrying a downside that the envious person is helpfully drawing your attention to. It is rarely explicit. It is the absence of the wholehearted congratulation you expected, the qualified acknowledgement, the almost immediate pivot to something else, the strange flatness in the person who should be celebrating with you and is instead, for reasons they may not be fully conscious of, doing something that functions as the opposite of celebration. The second form is the envy of becoming. This is subtler and in many ways more significant. It appears not in response to a specific achievement, but in response to a change in who you are. When you grow psychologically, when you leave behind patterns that were keeping you small, when you become, through whatever combination of work and experience and genuine self-encounter, more fully yourself than you were before. This form of envy is particularly common in long-term relationships, in families, in friendships that were established when both people were at a similar level of development and one person has since moved. The envious response to becoming does not look like a response to achievement. It looks like a response to you, like a discomfort with the person you are now that was not present with the person you were before, like a preference, never stated but consistently communicated, for the version of you that was more limited, more uncertain, more in need of the things that the relationship provided when you were less fully yourself. The third form is the envy of quality. This is perhaps the most difficult to identify because it attaches not to what you have done or who you have become, but to who you simply are. The quality of your attention, the depth of your perception, the ease with which you navigate situations that others find difficult, the way you hold yourself in rooms, the quality of your presence that people respond to before you have said anything or done anything that could serve as a target for more explicit envy. This form is often experienced not as a response to something specific, but as a general resistance. A low-level antagonism that has no identifiable cause, a sense from certain people that simply being what you are, before you have achieved anything, before you have grown anywhere, simply by virtue of existing as fully as you exist, produces in them a friction that has no clean explanation. This is the form of envy that is hardest to name without feeling arrogant, because naming it requires saying, not that you have done something impressive, but that something in your essential nature is producing a response in others. And that is the thing the culture most strongly trains people to not say about themselves. Jung's concept of the shadow is directly relevant to understanding why envy takes the forms it takes. The shadow, in his framework, contains everything the person has been unable to claim in themselves. Everything that was decided, through the process of formation in a particular environment, was not safe, not acceptable, not compatible with the version of themselves that would be loved and included. The ambitious person who was taught that ambition was selfish has ambition in their shadow. The expressive person who was taught that visibility was dangerous has expressiveness in their shadow. The person who longed to be seen as capable but grew up in an environment where capability was threatening to someone with authority over them has that capability in their shadow. When such a person encounters in someone else the quality that lives in their own shadow, the quality that was suppressed in themselves, the response is not simple admiration, it is charged. It is the encounter with something that was wanted and denied, something that lives in you but was deemed too dangerous to express. And the feeling that produces is envy, not because the envious person is bad, but because what they are encountering in you is a mirror of something in themselves that has never been allowed. Your achievement reflects their suppressed ambition. Your expressiveness reflects their compressed visibility. Your capability reflects the capability that was made dangerous for them to claim. And the reflection is painful because it shows them, without intending to, without any unkindness on your part, what they gave up, what they are still giving up, what they might have been if the conditions had been different, or the choices had been different, or the courage had been available. This does not make the envy your responsibility, but it changes what the envy is about. It is not, in most cases, primarily about you. It is about the encounter with their own unlived life. And you are simply the person in whom that life became visible. There is a specific pattern that deserves extended attention, because it is one of the most common ways envy operates in close relationships, and it is one of the most damaging, and it is almost always the last thing either person names. It is the pattern of the relationship that thrives on your limitation. Not consciously, not with deliberate cruelty, but structurally. The relationship was established when you were in a particular place, a place of uncertainty or struggle or need. And the other person, whether a friend or a partner or a family member, found their role in relation to you in that place. They were the capable one, the stable one, the one who had things figured out while you were still working things through, the one whose position in the relationship was organized around a comparison that consistently favored them. And you grew. You did the work. You built the capacity. You became, through genuine effort and genuine self-development, someone whose uncertainty is more resolved, whose capability is more evident, whose need for what the relationship originally provided is less acute. And something in the relationship shifted. Not because you did anything wrong, because the equilibrium on which the relationship was built no longer exists. The other person's role, which was organized around your limb, like a discomfort with the person you are now that was not present with the person you were before, like a preference, never stated but consistently communicated, for the version of you that was more limited, more uncertain, more in need of the things that the relationship provided when you were less fully yourself. The third form is the envy of quality. This is perhaps the most difficult to identify because it attaches not to what you have done or who you have become, but to who you simply are. The quality of your attention, the depth of your perception, the ease with which you navigate situations that others find difficult, the way you hold yourself in rooms, the quality of your presence that people respond to before you have said anything or done anything that could serve as a target for more explicit envy. This form is often experienced not as a response to something specific, but as a general resistance. A low-level antagonism that has no identifiable cause, a sense from certain people that simply being what you are, before you have achieved anything, before you have grown anywhere, simply by virtue of existing as fully as you exist, produces in them a friction that has no clean explanation. This is the form of envy that is hardest to name without feeling arrogant, because naming it requires saying, not that you have done something impressive, but that something in your essential nature is producing a response in others. And that is the thing the culture most strongly trains people to not say about themselves. Jung's concept of the shadow is directly relevant to understanding why envy takes the forms it takes. The shadow, in his framework, contains everything the person has been unable to claim in themselves. Everything that was decided, through the process of formation in a particular environment, was not safe, not acceptable, not compatible with the version of themselves that would be loved and included. The ambitious person who was taught that ambition was selfish has ambition in their shadow. The expressive person who was taught that visibility was dangerous has expressiveness in their shadow. The person who longed to be seen as capable but grew up in an environment where capability was threatening to someone with authority over them has that capability in their shadow. When such a person encounters in someone else the quality that lives in their own shadow, the quality that was suppressed in themselves, the response is not simple admiration, it is charged. It is the encounter with something that was wanted and denied, something that lives in you but was deemed too dangerous to express. And the feeling that produces is envy, not because the envious person is bad, but because what they are encountering in you is a mirror of something in themselves that has never been allowed. Your achievement reflects their suppressed ambition. Your expressiveness reflects their compressed visibility. Your capability reflects the capability that was made dangerous for them to claim. And the reflection is painful, because it shows them, without intending to, without any unkindness on your part, what they gave up, what they are still giving up, what they might have been if the conditions had been different, or the choices had been different, or the courage had been available. This does not make the envy your responsibility, but it changes what the envy is about. It is not, in most cases, primarily about you. It is about the encounter with their own unlived life. And you are simply the person in whom that life became visible. There is a specific pattern that deserves extended attention, because it is one of the most common ways envy operates in close relationships, and it is one of the most damaging, and it is almost always the last thing either person names. It is the pattern of the relationship that thrives on your limitation, not consciously, not with deliberate cruelty, but structurally. The relationship was established when you were in a particular place, a place of uncertainty or struggle or need. And the other person, whether a friend or a partner or a family member, found their role in relation to you in that place. They were the capable one, the stable one, the one who had things figured out while you were still working things through, the one whose position in the relationship was organized around a comparison that consistently favored them. And you grew. You did the work. You built the capacity. You became, through genuine effort and genuine self-development, someone whose uncertainty is more resolved, whose capability is more evident, whose need for what the relationship originally provided is less acute. And something in the relationship shifted, not because you did anything wrong, because the equilibrium on which the relationship was built no longer exists. The other person's role, which was organized around your limitation, has been disrupted by your growth. And the disruption produces something that looks like distance or criticism, or the specific kind of undermining that appears precisely when you are doing well. Because your doing well is, in the architecture of this relationship, a problem. Not for you, for them, because it removes the structural advantage on which their sense of themselves in the relationship depended. Jung understood this dynamic precisely. He described it as one of the most common resistances to individuation. The way the growth of one person in a close relationship produces anxiety in the other. Not because the other person is malicious, but because genuine growth always disrupts the established order. And the established order, however limiting, was familiar, was safe, was the ground on which both people had been standing. When you grow, you pull that ground. And the response is not always gratitude. Here is where the conversation about envy usually fails. It identifies the phenomenon, it explains the mechanism, it validates the experience of the person who has been on the receiving end of it. And then it offers one of two inadequate responses. The first is to make yourself smaller, to manage the envy by reducing what produces it, to achieve less visibly, to grow more quietly, to compress the qualities that are generating the friction into something that takes up less space in the room. This is the response most people arrive at by default when the envy goes unnamed. Because when you do not know what is producing the tension, and the self-examination does not find a clear answer, the only remaining explanation is that you are somehow too much. And the solution to being too much is to become less. This response has a specific and significant cost. It works. In the short term, it works. The tension reduces, the relationship stabilizes. The person who was envying you becomes more comfortable in your presence. Because the thing that was producing the discomfort has been removed. But what has also been removed is a part of you. And that part does not dissolve simply because it has been compressed. It continues to press for expression. In the low-grade resentment that accumulates in the relationship, in the specific sadness of knowing that you are performing a smaller version of yourself to maintain a connection that cannot hold the full version. In the eventual recognition that what the relationship requires is your reduction, and what you require is your expansion, and those two requirements are not compatible. The second inadequate response is contempt. The move that says, "These people are beneath me, their envy is their problem. I will simply stop caring what they think and live at full capacity regardless of how it lands." This response contains something true. Their envy is their work. You are not responsible for managing it. Living at full capacity is not something you should be required to negotiate away. But contempt closes something. It closes the capacity for genuine compassion for what the envy is actually about. For the recognition that the person envying you is, in most cases, not a villain. They are someone in pain, someone whose encounter with what you have, or what you are, is producing a mirror of something in themselves they have never been able to claim. And that recognition, held alongside the clear refusal to compress yourself for their comfort, is the only response that costs you nothing. Because it neither asks you to shrink nor asks you to harden. It asks you to understand, clearly, without sentimentality, without excusing the behavior that has produced real impact, but with the accuracy that comes from seeing the mechanism for what it is. There is a dimension of this that is almost never discussed. The envy that you carry toward others. This video has been primarily about the experience of being envied, but the psychological completeness that Jung insists upon requires acknowledging that the mechanism works in both directions. The qualities in others that produce a charged response in you, the achievements that land with more weight than simple admiration, the lives that produce not just inspiration, but something less comfortable, the people whose having something you want produces in you, the specific friction that is the signature of envy, these are your own shadow speaking. The qualities in others that you envy are almost always qualities that you have in yourself, but have not fully claimed. The person you envy for their confidence has confidence in their own shadow. The person you envy for their creative freedom has creative freedom in theirs. The person you envy for the quality of their relationships, their ease with intimacy, their capacity to be fully known and still loved, has that capacity in theirs. The charge of envy is not a signal that the other person has something you cannot have. It is a signal that the other person has something you have not yet permitted yourself to have. And reclaiming it does not require taking it from them. It requires turning the attention inward, asking why the quality was suppressed, what made it unsafe to claim, what the environment that formed you decided about this quality that led to its being compressed into the shadow rather than expressed in the life. That inquiry, followed with genuine honesty, is one of the most direct routes to genuine psychological expansion available. Because every quality you envy in someone else is a map to something in yourself that is waiting to be found. There is something that needs to be said about the specific loneliness of being envied, because it is a particular kind of isolation that is very difficult to describe to someone who has not experienced it. It is the loneliness of not being able to celebrate your own life fully, of having to calibrate your success before sharing it, of knowing, before you speak, which of the people around you can receive good news without the quality of reception changing in a way that will require management, of developing, across years of experience with this dynamic, a finely tuned sense of who in your life can genuinely hold your thriving and who requires you to present it at a reduced volume, and eventually, for many people, developing the habit of the reduced volume as a default, not just in specific relationships but as a general orientation. A guardedness around your own achievement that was installed in response to the responses it produced. A learned quietness about the things that are going well that was supposed to protect the relationships but has also, over time, produced a specific kind of internal isolation. The feeling of living your actual life in a slightly private register, of the public version being managed and the real version being something you carry more quietly. Jung called this the cost of adaptation to the collective. The way the individual, in order to maintain membership in the group, learns to regulate the expression of anything that disturbs the group's equilibrium. And the specific psychological cost of that regulation, paid not in dramatic events but in the cumulative quieting of genuine self-expression across ordinary days, is one of the least visible but most significant sources of the hollowness that many capable, accomplished, genuinely thriving people experience underneath the surface of a life that looks, from the outside, like everything they were working toward. The question of what to do with the envy of others, practically and specifically, requires more honesty than most advice on this subject offers, because the advice most commonly given is either to ignore it or to address it directly by naming it in the relationship. Both of these are sometimes appropriate and often not. Ignoring it, in the sense of simply proceeding without acknowledgement, works when the envy is mild and the relationship is otherwise solid. When the person envying you is fundamentally supportive and the envy is a passing response to a specific achievement rather than a structural feature of how they relate to you. In those cases, giving it no more weight than it deserves, continuing to show up fully, allowing the relationship's genuine strengths to reassert themselves, is often sufficient. But ignoring it does not work when the envy is structural, when it is the organizing feature of how the person relates to you, when every expression of your growth produces the same response and the relationship's equilibrium is fundamentally dependent on your remaining less than you are. In those cases, what is required is not the addressing of the envy directly, which almost never produces the outcome that the honest naming of it promises, but a renegotiation of the relationship itself. Or, in some cases, the recognition that the relationship in its current form is not compatible with your continued growth. That is a painful recognition. It is also, in certain cases, accurate. And avoiding it, because it is painful, maintaining the relationship by maintaining the reduction it requires, is the choice that costs more over time than the pain of the honest assessment. Addressing it directly, naming the envy explicitly in the relationship, is almost always inadvisable. Not because the naming is wrong, but because the person who is envying you is, in most cases, not consciously aware of what they are doing. The defense against the accusation of envy is almost total. Because envy is one of the most socially unacceptable emotional experiences available, almost nobody will acknowledge it. And the attempt to name it directly produces, in most cases, not the honest conversation that was hoped for, but a defensive response that damages the relationship further and leaves the original dynamic unchanged. The more useful move is not to name the envy in the other person. It is to understand it clearly enough that you stop personalizing it. Stop treating it as information about your worth. Stop allowing it to produce the compression of yourself that was its most significant cost. There is a specific psychological movement that Jung describes as necessary for the person who has spent years making themselves smaller in response to the discomfort of others. He calls it the reclamation of the projected self. The idea is this: the parts of yourself that you have compressed in response to the envy of others, the achievement you have downplayed, the growth you have quieted, the qualities you have managed into smaller versions of themselves, those parts did not disappear. They exist. But they exist at a distance from your conscious self-expression. They were not integrated. They were suppressed. And suppressed qualities, in Jung's framework, produce the same kind of psychological pressure as the shadow material we discussed earlier. They push for expression. In the restlessness that appears when you are living more quietly than you actually are. In the recurring awareness that the version of yourself being expressed publicly is not the full version. In the specific grief that attaches to the recognition of how much has been given away in the service of making others comfortable. The reclamation of these parts is not a dramatic act. It is not the public declaration that you will no longer minimize yourself. It is something quieter and more personal. It is the private decision, made and remade across ordinary moments, to stop editing, to say the thing about your work that is genuinely true, rather than the moderated version that will not produce discomfort, to receive a compliment without immediately deflecting it toward luck or others' contributions, or the ways in which the achievement was less than it appears, to allow yourself, in the presence of people who can hold it, to be as much as you actually are, without apology, without the habitual reduction that was supposed to protect the relationship but was actually, over time, protecting the other person's envy from having to be confronted. That reclamation is slow. The habit of compression was built across years of specific experiences. It does not dissolve in a single decision. But the direction of the movement matters. And the direction is toward full expression rather than managed reduction. Toward being as much as you are in as many contexts as you can tolerate. Toward letting what you have built and what you have become take up the actual space it occupies. Rather than the smaller space that the comfort of others has been requiring, there is something that envy, when understood clearly, actually offers. Not a gift in the sentimental sense, but information, precise information about what is visible in you, what is real in you, what you have built or become or expressed that is significant enough to produce a response in the people around you. The things that are not real, that are not genuinely significant, do not produce envy. They produce indifference. It is the real things that disturb. The genuine achievement, not the performed one. The actual growth, not the announced one. The authentic quality, not the constructed one. The envy you receive, however uncomfortable, however poorly expressed, however productively confused with other things in the relationships where you experience it, is pointing at something in you that is real enough to matter. Real enough to produce a mirror effect in the people who encounter it. Real enough to disrupt the equilibrium of people whose own unexpressed potential is reflected in it. That is not a small thing. Most people go through their lives producing very little envy. Not because they are less capable, but because they are living further from their actual capacity, less fully expressed, more completely adapted to what the collective requires, more thoroughly compressed into the acceptable range. The person who produces genuine envy is, almost always, the person who is living closer to what they actually are. Who has done the work of moving toward genuine self-expression rather than away from it? Who has paid the cost of that movement in the specific discomfort of disrupting the equilibria around them? And who continues to move anyway? Not because they are indifferent to the discomfort of others, but because they understand, at a level that has become genuine rather than merely intellectual, that the alternative, the life lived at reduced volume for the comfort of the people who cannot hold the full version, is a cost that no relationship is worth. Jung wrote that the individual who has the courage to be themselves produces, inevitably, a certain amount of friction with the world. Not because the world is cruel, not because genuine self-expression is inherently aggressive, but because genuinely being yourself in a world where most people are performing managed versions of themselves, is a disruption. It shows what is possible. It demonstrates, without intending to, that the compression most people have accepted as necessary is not actually necessary. That more is available. That the ceiling that was installed by the collective is not, in fact, the actual ceiling. And that demonstration, however quiet, however unintentional, is threatening to everyone who has accepted the compression as their permanent condition. The envy is the sign that you have refused the compression they accepted. That something in you has grown past the ceiling they have been maintaining. That you have become, in some specific and visible way, a proof of possibility that the people around you find more disturbing than inspiring. Because inspiring is what it looks like from the outside. Disturbing is what it feels like from the inside, when the possibility being demonstrated is one you yourself gave up. You did not create that situation. You simply lived your life honestly enough that it became visible. And the cost of that, visibility, the friction, the withdrawal, the specific loneliness of being envied by people you wanted only to be known by, is real. It deserves to be acknowledged as real. And it deserves to be understood for what it is. Not as evidence that you did something wrong, not as a reason to become smaller, as the specific, unavoidable, ultimately meaningful cost of a life lived at genuine scale. The envy is not the problem. It is the signal that something real is happening, that something true is being expressed, that the life being lived is, whatever its difficulties, whatever its costs, whatever the friction it produces in the people who encounter it, genuinely yours, and genuinely enough to matter. That is not a small thing. In a world of compressions and reductions and managed approximations of the self, it is, in fact, the only thing. If this video reached something in you, the one appearing on your screen right now will too. Click on the subscribe button and keep watching.